Hey Vikings Nation, what's up family? Buckle up, because the Minnesota Vikings are walking into one of the most fascinating off-seasons we've seen in years. And today we're diving deep into the biggest questions burning in the hearts of the fan base. This is more than just rumors and headlines. This is about direction, identity, and the future of purple and gold. After a 9-8 finish, this season felt like a roller coaster that somehow ended with momentum. A 5-game winning streak to close things out changed the entire mood around this team and left fans wondering what this roster could become with the right tweaks. And now, with defensive coordinator Brian Flores locked in, the noise has shifted. The Minnesota Vikings finally have stability on one side of the ball, and that gives the front office freedom to ask the real questions, the hard ones, the ones we're tackling right now. Let's start with the big picture because context matters. Kevin O'Connell's squad didn't just limp to the finish line. They surged. That late-season push showed grit, growth, and a glimpse of what this team believes it can be. 9 wins might not sound flashy, but how you get there tells the real story. This team learned how to close games, leaned on resilience, and built belief inside the locker room. That belief is dangerous in the best way. It sets expectations, and now the Minnesota Vikings enter the offseason knowing they're not far off, but also knowing not far isn't good enough. One of the smartest moves of the offseason already happened: keeping Brian Flores. Vikings fans know how massive that is. His defensive turnaround wasn't luck. It was culture, pressure, and accountability. With Flores returning, the defense finally has continuity. That means less scrambling, fewer resets, and more growth. Players know the system, and young guys can actually develop instead of relearning everything. This also changes draft and free agency priorities. When you trust your defensive architect, you can afford to be more strategic, and that's where things get really interesting. Now let's get into the question that's lighting up every Vikings comment section and mailbag: the quarterback situation. Specifically, the debate around J.J. McCarthy and what the future really holds. When the Minnesota Vikings drafted McCarthy 10th overall, expectations were clear: patience. He was young, raw, and seen as a long-term investment rather than an instant savior. But what actually unfolded sparked concern, confusion, and controversy. Injuries, inconsistency, and limited availability have defined his early NFL chapter, and that's impossible to ignore. Availability is the first ability, and unfortunately McCarthy hasn't had much of it. Over his early stretch, injuries piled up and disrupted any chance of rhythm or confidence. A torn meniscus, a high ankle sprain, a concussion, each setback stalled development. Instead of building momentum, he was constantly restarting. For a young quarterback, that's brutal. Timing, trust, and comfort all disappear when you're rehabbing instead of learning on the field. And when McCarthy did play, the production simply didn't match the draft status. Among qualifying quarterbacks, the advanced metrics painted a rough picture. Near the bottom in EPA per play, near the bottom in success rate, completion percentage struggling to meet league standards. Stats don't tell the whole story, but they do tell a story, and right now, it's not the one Vikings fans hope to be reading. Here's where the debate gets real. If McCarthy were a late-round flyer, this wouldn't even be a conversation. Developmental quarterbacks come and go all the time, but draft position changes everything. Being a top 10 pick comes with expectations, patience limits, and organizational pressure. The question isn't, will he start someday? It's, does he deserve to start based on what we've seen so far? And that's where opinions split hard. Right now, the likely plan points toward McCarthy getting another opportunity down the road, possibly in 2026. But that timeline alone raises eyebrows. The Minnesota Vikings are not a rebuilding team. This roster has talent, leadership, and playoff expectations. So the front office has to balance patience with urgency, development with reality, hope with evidence. That brings us to another major theme from the Vikings fan base: roster priorities. And make no mistake, the loudest answers live on defense. Cornerback, inside linebacker, safety, defensive tackle. For massive needs all on the same side of the ball. With Flores running the show, those positions aren't just holes, they're opportunities to build something elite. The cornerback, the Vikings need youth, speed, and instincts. The modern NFL demands coverage defenders who can survive on islands. Inside linebacker needs stability. Communication, gap discipline, and coverage ability are non-negotiable in Flores' scheme. Reminder, this defense thrives on disguise and aggression. Every weak link gets exposed fast. Safety is another pressure point. Versatility matters here. Guys who can rotate, blitz, cover, and tackle in space. The Vikings have leaned on veterans, but the future demands younger legs and longer-term answers. And then there's defensive tackle, the engine of everything. Without interior disruption, no defense truly works. But here's the twist. Because Flores is back, the Vikings might actually shift early focus to the offensive side of the ball. Why? Because continuity on defense allows calculated risks elsewhere. And that leads us to Jordan Addison. Addison's name has quietly surfaced in trade speculation, and that alone changes the entire offensive outlook. Trading him wouldn't just be a roster move, it would be a philosophical one. It would signal a shift in timeline or priorities. Losing a young, dynamic wide receiver forces the front office to replace production, speed, and chemistry. So naturally, Vikings fans are asking, if that happens, who are the offensive weapons worth targeting in the draft? In the early rounds, the focus could be on impact players, wide receivers who can win one-on-one or tight ends who stretch the seam. Mid-rounds? Look for versatile backs, developmental receivers, or offensive linemen with positional flexibility. Late rounds are about upside speed, traits, and fit within Kevin O'Connell's system. This is where scouting and coaching alignment matters most. The Vikings can't afford mismatches between talent and usage. Every pick needs a plan. Every plan needs patience. And every decision echoes for years. That's why this offseason feels so crucial. The Minnesota Vikings are at a crossroads, not because they're failing, but because they're close. Close enough to dream, close enough to risk, close enough to get it wrong if they're not careful. Now I want to hear from you. Should the Vikings stay patient with McCarthy or explore other quarterback paths? Would you trade Jordan Addison if the value is right? And which defensive position scares you the most right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's debate like real Vikings fans do. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Minnesota Vikings news, smash that like button, subscribe for daily Vikings updates, and share this with every member of the Skol family. Skol forever.